Yo, what's happening, Cucumber Squad, and welcome back to the Fable Sphere, and we're doing another Let's Talk About It. So this is a second episode of this new segment, and today I thought we would talk about this new documentary, SHOWTIME documentary that is coming out, because I've had a lot of people that have wanted me to weigh in on this particular trailer. The documentary is still to come. This is just the trailer. And it says, warning, this trailer may trigger white people. So at least they're giving you a warning. If you're a white person, they're giving you a warning that we are intently trying to piss you off, right? So at least they're giving you that. It's a disclaimer. I appreciate disclaimers. Right, before we even get started, 3 things before we even get going. Social media, Instagram, Twitter. No, I don't have Twitter. Instagram and TikTok, right? Over here, here's the handles. Follow me if you want to follow me. Don't follow me if you don't want to follow me. Thing number 2, put down in the comment section anything that you want me to react to. If you want me to weigh in on any other story on the Let's Talk segment, also put that down in the comment. I will streamline this with the website. The website is coming out soon. I will give you more details about that literally in the coming days. So yeah, wait for that. Thing number 3, Frank Warner's books. As you know, he's selling poetry books as a series and also as individual. All of the details are in the description section. I'm not going to go too hectically into it. Frank will comment as well. I'll pin his comment and you can get more details from him. Let's get going. This is called Everything's Gonna Be All White, right? Okay, so you can see they're already playing on the everything's gonna be all right, but everything's gonna be all white. I haven't seen this. I haven't seen this trailer yet. People have just asked me to watch it, but I can already see where this is going. I can see where the political narrative is going to take us. So let's see what we got over here. Let's go.
I think what annoys me most about white people is when they pretend like they're the victim. What's also annoying is when they kill us.
What is fragile about whiteness when everything has been constructed around it?
Every part of who I am has been.
Okay, wait. So let's just go back, because there's a couple of points that obviously I want to take this point by point. I'm going to try and not ramble on, because obviously there's a lot of nuance to these type of topics. You know, you can go on for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours talking about each individual one of these topics. Essentially, like, we can segment all of these and talk about it. But let me sort of just do a brush over on all of these topics.
Is when they pretend like they're the victim.
Okay, so what irritates her the most is, and then she's a famous actor, I can't remember her name. I love the Hollywood elites. I love it when the Hollywood elites need to weigh in on political things. You know, the most privileged people among us, the most privileged people in society, need to weigh in on how life is so tough for them. So let's begin with the white people playing victims. Everybody in this world plays victim, right? You'd be very foolish to think that it is only one group that plays victim, and only one group that is allowed to play victim. Everybody plays victim. If somebody feels that people are being a little bit unjust to them, or people are saying things that are unright, they're going to have a voice. And today what's happening is people that come out and say and give their opinions, saying, wait a second, I don't agree with that. Let's talk about it. But what's happening is discussion is being shut down, and anything that comes as an opinion that doesn't suit you, that's labeled, oh, you're trying to play the victim, and they cast aside, right? So when you're talking about what I hate about white people playing the victim, you're making you're being part of an entire documentary where you play the victim. You yourself are doing the very act that you hate that white people do. You're saying, I hate it when they play the victim. That's why me, as a wealthy, privileged Hollywood star, I am going to partake in a documentary where I play a victim for an hour and a half to 2 hours. Right? So that in itself is quite ironic and quite hypocritical. But anyway, let's carry on.
What's also annoying is when they kill us.
Now the thing is that what's also annoying is when they kill us is also I like the fact that they umbrella that, like, you know, what I hate about white people, you know, because it's open season in America for white people. That's what white people are doing in America, specifically in the inner cities and in Chicago. It's open season for white people. That's where they do their best work, right? In all of the inner cities in Chicago, in downtown Manhattan, that's where they're going around and just, you know, killing black people in record numbers, weekend on weekend on weekend. So this is what is quite amazing, is that they go and they umbrella term it all. They put white people under an umbrella. Are there cops that have done some stupid things, cops that have been racist, cops that have been brutal, cops that have been trigger happy? Yes, there absolutely is that. And that, I think, should be segmented and being like, yes, that's an issue that we need to deal with. We need to deal with cops that are trigger happy, that don't need to being going so heavily and so violent on something that doesn't call for it, like in an incident that doesn't call for it, right? But what I also like is the fact, what I find amazing is the fact that they like to detach the two crimes that are being committed, right? Homicides that are being committed, gang violence that is being committed from police itself. So what they're saying is like, no, this whole police brutality is its own thing. Like, we don't want you to sort of sully and muddy the waters and mystify this argument. We really just want you to talk about police brutality, of which it's a small percentage of cops that are doing this. The majority of cops and the majority of people in the world are good people. The majority of people and the majority of cops in the world do not want to see black people being harmed. They do not want to see inequalities between races. That's the majority of people. But what they're doing, what they're trying to do, specifically the Hollywood elites, right, is they're trying to take the very, very small portion of people and they're just saying, yeah, that's all white people. All white people are like this. All white people think like this. If you had to generalize in that fashion the other way around to say that all black people do this and all black people commit crimes and things like that, you would absolutely be shunned from society. And so you should be, because it's not correct. It's incorrect. It's incorrect to say those things, that all black people commit crime. They don't. It's incorrect to say that all white cops are racist. All white people are racist. So it's incorrect to say that. So for me, it's like they try to detach the two from each other, but then you've also got situations where there are individualized cases where cops do need to make split-second decisions in a very hostile sort of situation, like when a girl is trying to stab another girl with a butcher knife, literally about to commit an erroneous crime, and he's got 1 to 2 seconds to stop another black girl from dying, and he shoots the other black girl, sadly, right? But he saved somebody and he still gets denounced and he becomes the criminal. Like LeBron James even tweeted about that cop and saying, you're next, right? And I'm saying, when you're doing that, you start literally diluting your message. When you go in the defense of Jussie Smollett, who went and fabricated an entire assault on himself, and you still come to his defense and say, no, he's right. He's the victim. He's the victim of his own crime. He is the victim, and white people are to blame for that as well. You're just diluting the message for me. You're diluting the movement for me. Because if it was a rational situation where you're rational about it and say, that was wrong, George Floyd was dead wrong, leaning on a person's neck, even if he took drugs or not drugs, makes no, you take the rap for that and we're going to protest for that, 100%, I'm with you, I'm there, I'm sharing one voice with you, right? No problem. But when a cop tries to save another black girl from another black girl and you try and sort of vilify the cop, I'm saying, okay, wait a second, you're losing the thing. And then when you go out in defense of Jussie Smollett, who literally went and created a crime on himself, and that's still white people's fault, you kind of completely lost the message with me. So it's consistency over here. BLM can be a super important movement, right? If it's responsible with the way it handles these issues. And it's a big, powerful movement that needs to be responsible in the way they handle issues like this. Right? Because if you're going to do it to just be divisive and to further push a narrative and to further push an agenda, then I'm sorry, that movement is not a good movement. And when you're shutting down black people who have a different voice to yours or have a different opinion to yours, and you're shutting them down and calling them the new blackface of white supremacy because you've sided with white people, you're taking away agency from black people who think from themselves. You're taking away their individuality and say, no, and you can only think like us. And if you don't think like us, which there are many, just go onto YouTube, just go and search reactions to this particular trailer, and you will see how many people are, just based on their thumbnails, very against this trailer. So that is where my issue comes in, because I'm telling you now, if Jussie Smollett had to come out today and say, you know what, guys, I apologize for what happened. I shouldn't have done that. It was a stupid thing. It was a moment of weakness. I tried to create something that was not true, right? To garner sympathy and to create divisions, and that I apologize. I wasn't thinking straight. I'm really sorry about that. If Jussie Smollett had to do that today, BLM would absolutely shun him. They would shun him today. They would say, you're no longer with us. You're no longer black. You're no longer with us. Right? Because you're not furthering. You're no longer a tool for the advancement of our agenda, essentially. So I don't have an issue with BLM and the foundation and the idea of what it was for, to bring light to police brutality. I don't have an issue with that. But I do believe that you should be engaging in more discussions with regards to responsibility and accountability of black people in inner cities, and black people who are committing crimes, and black people who are resisting police, as well as police being heavy, brutal, and being trigger happy for no reason. Because those two are very much coupled. Those two are coupled. Because if you reduce the crime rate and you increase responsibility and you increase accountability, the less police would have to attend to hostile situations as well. They already have their hands full. So defunding the police, I don't think does anything. Adding further services to help communities, I still want to see that happen. $90 million that was given to BLM, which is now embroiled in God knows how many corruption cases with property and where funds are going and things like that. Use those funds to further develop. Do what Nipsey Hussle wanted to do. Follow his legacy. Right? I'm still yet to see a Nipsey Hussle statue. I see there's a George Floyd statue, but I don't know why there's no Nipsey Hussle statue. The guy was a beacon of light to his community. He was a rapper that made millions and put millions back into his community. I'm yet to see a statue of that hero. Maybe it's coming soon. I don't know. Anyway, let's go.
What is fragile about whiteness when everything has been constructed around it?
The notion that everything has been constructed around whiteness, you really do need to clarify. They need to clarify what that means. Like, you need to clarify what it means that everything's been constructed around whiteness. Are we talking about political systems, or are we talking about everything? I'm hearing more and more often that mathematics has been constructed for white people, that physics has been constructed for white people, that every single thing that a white person has touched or invented is now somehow toxic. You do need to clarify that. Is it systems that you're concerned about? Is it capitalism that you're concerned about? Yes, capitalism has got its pros, it's got its pros and it's got its cons, essentially. But there's a lot of good things in that system and a lot of bad things in that system. It's far better than communism, but they really do need to clarify what that means. Because if it's like everything white people have ever created was created for white people and white people alone, that is actually very, very overtly untrue. Because when Nikola Tesla sought out to discover electricity, right, he wasn't saying like, no, this is only for white people, this is not for black people. The invention itself was for the betterment of the world. Right? All of these great people created great things for the advancement of the world. Were there evil men back then? Sure. Will evil men use these advancements for evil? Sure. Very much like Einstein when he created the whole E=mc². He knew that formula, he knew that was going to be something great that could be used for something powerful and something good, but he also knew that knowing human race, it can also be used for something bad, like nuclear weapons, essentially. But white people and white inventions have also massively benefited the world. That benefits all culture, all races, all creeds, all skin colors, right? It's made massive advancements in continents that literally need it when it comes to medicine, when it comes to internet, when it comes to navigation, when it comes to flying. You know what I mean? This notion that white stuff is all toxic, but we're all embroiled in the luxuries of it, is just pathetic. To sit there and say everything was constructed just for the white man, but I'm driving in a Bentley, I'm flying in a private jet, I love social media, I love smartphones, I love my GPS and navigation systems, I love YouTube where I can become are unbelievably wealthy off it and things like that. And many, I love to use Western and modern medicine that can, that has massively increased the average age of humanity by, God, like 30-40% since 100 years ago. Just 100 years ago, the humans were like living until 35, and 100 years later, humans are living to like 88 and 90. Right? That's all thanks to Western medicine. That's thanks to white innovation. Right? It's not a bad thing. It's not something to be so bitter about. Right? Yes, there are bad things, but can we talk about those bad things without trying to be hypocritical about it and putting everything that white people have ever created and put in this world as toxic, right? Because if it is, don't use it. Don't use what white people created if that's so toxic to you, right? Don't reap the benefits and then shit on it, essentially. Moving on.
Every part of who I am has been distorted or criminalized.
What do you... Okay.
Every part of who I am has been distorted or criminalized.
Every part of who you are has been distorted and criminalized. That exact statement in a documentary in any country, in any Middle Eastern country, would get you either killed or put in prison. Like, I don't understand. Like, America is the freest society for absolutely everybody. That statement alone, coming from this Muslim lady, right, cannot be said in any other country. I'm saying any other country in the Middle East, essentially, or in China. Try and say that against the government in China, or try and say that against publicly in a thing against the government in Russia, or in Iraq, or in Iran, or in Afghanistan, or Syria. This is the thing that I'm saying. Is like we've gotten to a point where we've gotten so conveniently bored in America that we need to create an issue out of absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. America's got nothing good to offer people, but they live the best. No one's leaving America. Everybody wants to come into America. Nobody's shipping out of America. But every single thing in America is just toxic. So toxic, in fact, that Muslim women in Afghanistan were begging American soldiers to take their children. They were saying, take my birthright, take my child with you, please. Take my child to your racist, oppressive country. As long as he or she is not here, as long as he or she is not in Afghanistan, I will miss them dearly. It will hurt me to the core. I'm giving up my child, but please, please, American soldier, please take him from here to your oppressive, racist, toxic country. Okay, carry on. Maybe they're right. Maybe this does trigger white people. Let's carry on.
Lies.
It's really just a bunch of white lies.
Yeah, I know. White people like that, I can't stand. Okay, and I'm saying like I'm for the particular, like I'm for the BLM movement. I'm for it if there's a rationality point that we can come to, that you're actually thinking and being rational, right? Fantastic. The one thing that you have got my support fully. If you're rational and you look at every single case in a logical, rational, sensible way, I would be absolutely 100% on your side. And my second demand would be to kick white people like this out of your spotlight. That's my second demand. Would be to kick white people like this out of your spotlight, because this is the generation we're living in at the moment. Attach yourself to a movement. Right? Whether you believe in the movement or whether you don't believe in the movement, it doesn't actually matter. And you garner all of the adulation, you garner all of the attention, you garner all of the celebration for being part of that movement, right? Because you're virtue signaling. You'd be hard pressed to find many people in the United States or anywhere in the world in 2022 that would argue for black people to not be equal, would argue for black people should be killed by cops. They would not argue for that. No one stands on that ground. The vast majority of people do not stand on that ground, right? They're 100% with you on that, right? But these people who need to stand above and beyond, they need to you'll give them a hill to talk, and they will construct a hill on top of a hill so that they can be further noticed, so that they can be further revered by society. Look at me, I'm better than every other white person. Know what I mean? I'm sitting on the ivory tower. Yo, look at him, look at him, look at him, look at him. And you won't sit down and actually have a debate with these people. You sit down and you have a debate with these people, and they're regurgitating everything that they hear from somebody else. None of them have a thought process of their own. They're these drones who just follow collective mentalities, which just tells me that they don't believe in anything. They believe in being part of something that brings them adulation. It brings them validation of being something. So that would be my two things. I'm 100% on the BLM train. So far as you look at things rationally, you start putting in place accountability and responsibility and things like that, and taking case by case. And when you go case by case and you see the injustices, I'm all for you. And my second request is to kick white people like this that are trying to hijack your movement, to take the spotlight out of your camp, and then we're good. Let's go.
We're storming the Capitol! You're not patriots. You're ridiculous.
Yes, I agree 100% with that. They're not patriots, they're ridiculous. Anybody that storms the Capitol and because they are upset about an election outcome are ridiculous. These people are stupid. But this is what's actually happened. This is what these idiots and these droogs that went and did this, that stormed the Capitol, and even the people who are justifying that, saying that, no, they should have stormed the Capitol. That's their building. No, that is not their building to go and trash, right? So for me, I completely agree with the fact that these people are absolutely idiotic, and unfortunately they got what came to them, whether it be unbelievably harsh or not unbelievably harsh. You don't do that in a civil society. There are ways to protest, there are ways to do things when you're not happy with the outcome of something. So what you actually all did, right, because it was all Republican based, what these 200-300 idiots did, because the majority of, the people who are protesting there weren't for this. They didn't want to do this, right? And they didn't do that. But what these idiots did is they went and sullied the name for absolutely everybody. They sullied the name for the Republicans, they sullied the name for conservatives, right? And they literally, they gave a political talking point to the Democrats on a silver platter. And they said, here you go, please use this for the rest of time. Please use this for the rest of time. And they're going to use it as a political talking point, right? Because now every single thing is being compared to January 6th. Everything. Joe Rogan now, there is ties and links to January things on an ideological perspective is how they're trying to argue this. Right? Not innocuous at all to say these things, but they do it anyway. But this is what's crazy is, yes, those people were stupid. They were idiots that should have been put in prison. 100%. Because now you've given that. And the same thing with the BLM riots that happened in 2020. The majority of the protests were peaceful. But there was a fringe group of people that were going around burning buildings, hurting people, using violence and murdering people. Right? Because they got too radical. Now that talking point, right, is you've given that talking point on a silver platter to Republicans to now use that against you. Although that talking point by the mainstream media tends to get heavily buried, saying like, oh no, you can't even talk about that. There were people in the media that were saying, who said, I mean, the contradictions are mad. I mean, you had Chris Cuomo come out saying, who said that protests, should be civil and peaceful? Who said that they should be? And I'm saying, okay, if that's your situations, what are you complaining about the January 6th thing, right? A lot of the media try to cover up for a lot of the radical wrongs that were done in 2020 by fringe groups in the BLM movement, by fringe groups, right? But they try to cover that up heavily, where it shouldn't be covered up. It should be called out and say, I'm sorry, but that is wrong. And it should be denounced by the movement. It should be denounced by BLM. And the same as the Capitol riots. They say this is a fringe group that does this, that did this, completely denounced that people should absolutely go to prison in both scenarios. People should go to prison and stay there, right? And that's how a civil, logical, rational society operates, right? But we're not in the rational anymore, so what difference does it make?
One of the definitions of American whiteness is ignorance.
That in itself is an ignorant statement. You cannot say the definition for American whiteness in America where you actually group an entire group of people, an entire class of people, you put them all under one umbrella and then you just label them. That in itself is ignorance. If you had to do it the other way around, that would be considered ignorance. If that was done, if that was a white person saying that about black people, that would be considered ignorance, right? So that statement in itself is ignorance, and this is something that they're trying to like be dramatic about. Even, you know, it's like, oh, this is a dramatic moment in this trailer. It's not a dramatic moment in this trailer at all. If that's the case, then the white man you've got in this trailer is ignorant as well. What are you doing working with an ignorant white person, right? That in itself is a very ignorant statement to make.
White people, we are not your problem. You are.
No, I don't understand. Why do you think that you are our problem? White people don't walk around saying, you know what's really my problem today? Black people. Which white people do that? Where do white people go out and say that black people are their problem? White people aren't thinking like that. The vast majority of white people aren't going out and saying, shit man, black people are my problem today. Right? What it seems by you making that statement is that actually white people are living rent-free in your own head, in your own. Who created this? I would love to know who created this, because I've got a suspicion that somebody was behind something like this. Who was involved in Showtime documentary? Give me 2 seconds. Who created this? Yeah, all right. Yeah, okay. I now understand. I now understand the entire construct of this fully. The moment you see Ibram X Kendi listed as one of the people who are involved in this, you're like, all right, okay. Now I understand. It's not even worth talking about it.
You are.
Should white people today feel any responsibility for slavery?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, of course. Of course, hell yeah. Hopefully he elaborates on that in the actual documentary itself, right? So for some odd reason, this is the thing, is that they look at this as innocuous, right? And you know, you're creating trailers like this and creating documentaries like this. They say it's innocuous because it's okay now. It's okay to berate and it's okay to make fun of white people and to trash them and put them down in 2020 when they had no involvement in the inequities of the past, right? So they say, it's completely innocuous. They can't do anything about it. And if you don't like it, we'll use their own sort of thought process on them, saying stop being triggered, right? But this is what actually happens behind the scenes. Right? And this is what's so pernicious about this, is the fact that when white people come out and watch this today in 2020 and say, okay, I am triggered by this, right? That's still a healthy sentiment. It's a healthy sentiment to say, listen, I feel like, you know, you're lumping me and you're painting me with the same brush, or you know, you're lumping me in the same basket as like treacherous people in the past where I had absolutely nothing to do with it. Even my parents had nothing to do with it. I have nothing to do with it, and certainly my children have nothing to do with it, right? And what's so pernicious about that is the moment you keep taking a talking point and a topic such as racism into account, and you start doing this where you're berating white people, everything's racist. Anything. You are racist for just being white. Your child is racist for just being born white, even though he had no ties or connections or anything to the past. And to try and teach him and say that you are at fault for all of this and things like that. What you're actually doing is you're just diluting the message fully. You're diluting what you're trying to achieve, because that word racist is a big word. You slap that on anybody. And just a couple of years ago, I'm talking about in modern in the recent past, if you had to slap that word on somebody, people automatically, instantaneously panic. Even to today, if someone says you're a racist, it's immediately everyone goes into defensive mode and say you have to tell why am I racist? What did I say? What did I do? What injustices did I perform on a person of a different skin color? It's a big label to slap onto somebody. But what's happening now, and what's so pernicious about now, is when you slap that label onto everything that exists is racist, you empty the word out of all its meaning. You empty it out. And why it's so pernicious is because people no longer have the healthy response of being like, wait a sec, I'm actually offended by what you're saying. You know what their response is? It's flippant. They're like, yeah, of course I'm racist. Yeah, if I have an opinion, I'm racist. Yeah, if I do this, I'm racist. No, yes, you're right. No, we're all racist. Everything's racist. You're correct. Now, what happens when you start constructing a society that's so flippant about it? You're taking what is a serious issue and you're making it a very unserious issue. You're taking all the impetus out of the issue, because the racist people who are genuinely racist, right, are going to crawl under that radar, and they're going to do their acts under that radar, because it's like, what difference does it make? They're not going to blame us individually for being racist. Everyone takes the rap for it. All white people are racist, right? And what happens there is the majority of white people who aren't bad people are saying, yeah, well, we don't care. We don't care that you call us racist, because you call everything racist. Right? So if everything's racist, nothing is racist. So you actually letting real racists get away with real racist things, because you've created this massive blanket that you can't even tell who is and who isn't anymore. And that's what's so pernicious about something like this. Right? The response from white people saying, I'm offended by this, is a genuine response from genuinely good people. Because people who aren't genuine and see something like this will laugh it off and be like, I don't care, right? I don't care if you think I'm racist, because they feel that, those people are racist, so they don't care, right? But the people who aren't, and in today's world, it's this loop mentality of, if you deny that you're racist, right? So they catch you out that way. Your denial of you being racist makes you racist, right? And if you don't deny that you're racist. So you see how they catch you in that little loop mentality, where they're saying there's nothing you can do or say or opinion or argument or anything that you can pose that is going to change our mind that you're racist. You're racist either way, right? And when you create that type of mentality, then people will be like, okay, well, if that's the case, fine, cool, everything's racist. See how far you get with that. Know what I mean? That's dangerous. It's dangerous for the movement itself.
White Jesus or black Jesus?
Jesus was not white. Think of geography. Ain't no way Jesus walked around with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Who cares? Who cares, right? Me particularly, as not like a very religious person, I'm more like a spiritualist, right? So I'm not one that sort of studies the Bible or is part of like a Catholic or a Christian religion or something like that. I've been involved in many different religions, including I was brought up in a Jewish home, but I had a Catholic father, so I was brought up with two very different ones, and I took a different route, although respecting all religions in its entirety, essentially. For me, the best religion in the world is whatever you believe is the best religion in the world, right? If it means something to you, if it adds hope to you, then that's fantastic. But as for Jesus, who cares? That is the way people depicted Jesus back then, right? I think if we're going to start talking about what Jesus' actual color was, or what he actually looked like, I think you'd probably have to bring first bring hard evidence that he even walked among human beings, right? Bring hard evidence of that. Aside from the man-written scriptures, bring evidence of that he actually walked among human beings before we start deciding like what he looked like. Firstly, who cares what he looked like? That's how people perceived him. That's how he was depicted, right? And for me, black Jesus, white Jesus makes no difference. If black people in black churches want to depict Jesus as a black person, have at it. Go. I don't know why that should even be an ideological talking point. It's like you can perceive him however you want to perceive him, because this argument wasn't made by you. It was made by people centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries ago that have handed it down from generation to generation to generation. You have not personally seen Jesus for yourself. So if you want to portray him in a way that best suits your community, do that. Change your stained glass windows in your churches to a black Jesus that further enhances your faith in the way that you decide to perceive it. Do that, right? Does it matter what color Jesus is? I don't particularly care if he's white or black, right? Black people can go ahead, take Jesus and how you perceive him to be, right? And change the stained glass windows and change the crucifixes in your churches to depict that, so that it makes you feel more comfortable about it, right? I don't really have an issue with that. I don't care. I'm a spiritualist at the end of the day. So I think it's a futile argument to discuss what he looked like. I think whatever you want to depict him as that, okay?
White culture fears the end of the world. For us as Native people, the end of the world already happened like multiple times.
The end of the world happened multiple times for many civilizations, and not just Native people. Native people themselves were murdering Native people for land. African people were murdering African people for land. Western people were murdering Western people for land. Persians were murdering Persians for land. That is the way the world worked back then. Was it right? No. Was it brutal? Yes. Right? But you cannot sit here today with the reverse Nostradamus ideology and say that I'm going to reverse Nostradamus this and say that Christopher Columbus should have been progressive in the 1400s. That is not how it was back then. Unfortunately, not for any culture, and it's not to say that any of it was right. Right? It wasn't right for any culture to do that. It was brutal, it was barbaric, but that was the sign of the time, and everybody did it. Everybody partook in that activity. If you wanted that land and you could take that land, you took it. If the people who had that land could defend it, they kept it. If they couldn't defend it, they lost it. If they lost it and somebody else took it, it was theirs. And if somebody else came and attacked that person and they couldn't defend that, they then lost it. That is the way it worked. Was it right? Absolutely, it was not right. Was it barbaric? Absolutely, it was barbaric. But they don't have the 2020 philosophical progressive construct in their minds back then, right? So yes, and that goes the saying, 2020 vision, like 2020, hindsight is truly 2020. Absolutely, hindsight is truly 2020, because when you're out of that looking back, of course you can see it's wrong. Of course you can see slavery is wrong. Of course you can see all of those injustices are wrong. That's how civilizations progress.
Symbols and monuments, these are mementos of racism.
Bring that statue down. Put up a TCBY yogurt or something everybody can get behind.
I don't particularly care for statues, right? So those at the time when the statues were put up, yes, a lot of those men were slave owners, not because they were the one slave owner in that time and they decided to revere the one slave owner. It was a time where the slave trade was a big thing. Slaves were sold, slaves were bought, and it was everybody. It was a thing that they did. Again, it was wrong, right? And a lot of those men who were involved in the construction and the building and the advancements in America did some good things, right? But then again, as part of being human, did some bad things. And as part of being human in that time, those bad things were erroneous, but they also did a lot of things that did progress America to where it is today, right? So it's not to justify what they did, because you can never justify what they did. But the reason why it was erected was to lionize those people, to say that, this person did something great, or they wrote the Constitution, like Mount Rushmore, the forefathers, they wrote the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, whatever it was, right? Those were great things that made America what it is today in terms of a free, open market, open society type country. So for me personally, I don't particularly care about statues. I don't care about anybody putting statues. I just feel that if your argument for statues is that there shouldn't be statues, it was Trevor Noah's argument, in fact, there shouldn't be statues, the statues should be, you know, all of this history can live in a museum. We don't need to lionize people. I 100% agree with that. We don't need to lionize those people, and we don't need to lionize people like George Floyd either. Or at least if you're going to lionize George Floyd, how about we be fair about this and probably not hold him in the same light as Martin Luther King, who really did something to free black people and give them their independence. You know what I mean? Let's have levels to this, essentially. So I think that Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Nipsey Hussle, if you want to talk about a modern day, and there's so many more modern day black people in communities that were doing great things for their community, that I think should be lionized and should be, you know, put in the spotlight, that aren't put in the spotlight. So for me, take the statue down, remove it, don't remove it. I particularly don't care. You know what I mean? Take it all down if you like. It doesn't make a difference to me.
The truth has to be told about history.
We have to make sure that these stories are told from our perspective.
I 100% agree with that. Truth has to be told about history, and I do agree that it shouldn't be told through the lens of just white people. It shouldn't be, although the truth has been told about history. Where do we say that there's not enough of it being told? Then, okay, maybe there are, you know, things on the outskirts of the slavery issue that we should be talking about. There are things on the outskirts of injustices that we need to be talking about, that needs to be pushed further, you know, sort of in the school so that people understand. It needs to be told through the lens of a black person, how they perceived, how their generations got affected by it. 100% I agree with that perspective. I agree with the fact that black people should have their own perspective on how they saw it, and white people can have their perspective on how, you know, they saw it, essentially. However, if that history involves you telling my child that he is part of the problem and he is racist because of the inequities of people that shared his skin color 100 years ago, then I'm not interested in your perspective, right? Whether you're white or black. If you're going to come to me and say that my child is inherently racist and a beneficiary of this system, and he is inherently born racist because he shares the same skin color as, you know, atrocious tyrants in the past, then I'm not interested in your perspective, because then you're not being fair about it, you're not being rational about it, you're actually just being emotional, and you're trying to push a narrative and an agenda that is further divisive and polarizing. So that's my take on that.
There's always hope, you know what I'm saying? We don't give up.
It's about obliterating systemic and institutionalized racism.
Systemic and institutionalized racism. So I'm saying, okay, so again, they need to be more clear about systemic and institutionalized racism. Are there elements about the system in America that was oppressive? Yes. Are there elements of the system in America that are still perceived to be oppressive? Possibly, but not as much as before, and it is far more free. There are currently no laws in the American Constitution that benefit white people over black people. There are no laws like that. So if you're saying, okay, that we're going to take it down to a slightly more anecdotal level where it's like, okay, but, you know, there are maybe justices or there are people in the court that have a certain prejudice and would more likely put black people, a black person in prison than a white person. Sure, there's an argument there. There's absolutely 100% an argument that you can't say that that is not something that is happening. But to say that the entire system is racist, where it is completely baked into the system against black people, that logic would require that no black people are successful in America. That logic implies that black people in America cannot succeed, of which there are thousands that have succeeded, thousands that are millionaires, thousands that have used the very oppressive system that you've spoken about, you know, for their own benefit. Thousands of black people in America who have merit in the country, who have used the system, who have used Uncle Sam's system, right, to get ahead. Far greater than most countries in the world, right? you certainly have far more opportunities in South Africa, far more opportunities in America than as a black person today than you do in Africa, right? It's far more, because the system is stronger. Your economy is stronger, everything's stronger. There's now awareness with this, there's awareness with diversities, there's awareness with and there are things that are in place like affirmative action and things like that, right? You're far better off than any of your counterparts in other countries, essentially. So for me, it's just like, to go, again, these things are so nuanced, and to go and just slap those big trigger statements that are just going to be like, no, it's like, Trevor Noah, who was one of our own, left South Africa and went to America for an opportunity that he would have never gotten in South Africa. And so in South Africa, Trevor Noah was already established. Like he was like unbelievably well known. He was loved by the white community, he was loved by the black community, he was loved by the corporate elite in South Africa. Absolutely loved Trevor Noah. He was a charismatic, funny, very elusive, like I wouldn't say elusive, like he was a great character which absolutely everybody loved, and they used him for their marketing campaigns. He was the CEO of one of the biggest, when I say CEO, he was a marketing head, basically. He was like an ambassador for Cell C, which is one of the biggest telecommunication companies in South Africa, right? Got an opportunity in America, got a green card, got up and left instantaneously. Got up and left South Africa instantaneously, straight to America to make more money than he would have ever made in his entire life in South Africa. Right? That man is beyond wealthy. He has bought a house in the hills that has a price tag that even the most expensive houses in South Africa don't have that kind of price tag. And he bought a house in the hills in America with that. He bought a $10 million penthouse. He earns $28 million just from the Daily Show a year. $28 million, give or take, essentially. Right? It's like an exorbitant amount of money for somebody who is going to sit on a show and spew rhetoric that it is an oppressive system. An oppressive system that you have benefited greatly by just being a hard-working individual. You benefited greatly from that system. So I think it's a very unfair thing to go and take that America and dump it down that rabbit hole, because if you had to walk the earth for 5 minutes and return back to America, you'd be kissing the ground you'd be kissing the ground you stand on.
This is a wild place, y'all. It's a wild place. I know Harriet and Frederick be up there just like, what is they gonna do?
It is a wild place. It really is a wild place. Probably not in the way that you're saying that it's a wild place, but it is a wild place. And this lady, for whoever she is, I would love for her to actually come to the entirety of Africa. Pick a country in Africa. Pick a single country now, whatever one you want. Whichever country you choose in Africa, literally throw a dart of any country in Africa, and I'd say Africa, the majority of the world, throw a dart and go live there and tell me how much of a wow place America is, right? I'm saying wow in the way she's saying it, where it's a wow place as if it's like it's a bad thing that it's a wow place. I'm saying America is a wow place as it's a good thing. I would like for this lady, just a small little social experiment. Take a dart, throw it at an atlas, pick a country and go there and live there for 2 months. And then tell me if you'd rather stay there or you'd rather go to America. And you can do this multiple times. You can throw 50 darts in a time span and go to all of those countries. And then come and tell me which country you would rather prefer to live in. So, yeah. So, America is a wild place. Okay, so, like I said, you can see the intent. It's an Ibram X. Kendi in like sort of influenced documentary. And, so, when you hear that, you kind of find, I feel that, Ibram X. Kendi might have some good intentions for his own people, but going completely the wrong way about it, because things like this do nothing. Things like this, the moment you release that documentary, it will do nothing for black people. Nothing. Other than maybe feel better a little bit, like make them feel better about themselves in their hatred for white people, saying, yeah, fuck white people. You know what I mean? But that hatred isn't good. Hatred is something that you live with. That is something that you've got to carry every single day, because everybody else in the world is just going to go ahead and live their lives. And I said it's pernicious because people will see this and be like, all right, yeah, obviously. You know what I mean? It's another attack campaign. It does. What else is new? Who cares? Right? But you live with that hatred. You, in that community, live with that hatred. Rather than to do that, how about creating a documentary on how we can actually find a middle ground, on how we can actually find an understanding between each other, on how that a lot of the communication is being broken up. A lot of the communication is wrong, and it's misinformation that is being pushed for political agendas and talking mouthpieces in the media space, right? How about creating a documentary that does that, that exposes that? How about a documentary where it takes black conservatives and black liberals and have them have the debate and say why we are part of the same race and culture, but we see this differently. You see it one way, I see it a different way, right? And that just because I see it a different way to you doesn't make me racist or an ally of white people. It just makes me an individual that has agency, who can talk and think for myself as a black person. Why not create documentaries like that? You're gonna get further in that discussion than to create a documentary where you're trying to purposefully agitate white people and stick a knife and a dagger into them. Does that help? Does that do anything? It does absolutely nothing to white people, and it does absolutely nothing for black people. This achieves nothing, and it will not ever achieve anything, right? What achieves something is to actually come together and have the actual discussion, and to have people from multiple walks of society talking about the same issue in a documentary, where they can hash these things out in a civil manner without having to be judgmental and prejudiced to one another. That's what actually helps. But hey, you try it your way, and in 5 to 10 years, see how that goes. Anyway, I love you all. Please stay safe, please stay healthy. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.